most important thing is that we've got to institute fiscal responsibility in Washington, D.C. We've got to understand what are the constitutional mandates of the federal government and get the federal government back on the right size and the right scope to perform the duties. And remember what I said. What built America? Big government, entrepreneurial spirit. If we continue down big government's path, the debt's going to get bigger, the deficit's going to get bigger. If we believe it's entrepreneurial spirit, then we will have the right type of fiscal policies, tax policies, and regulatory policies to grow the private sector, which means that we will reduce the debt and the deficit.
How about removing Obama and reinstating Steagall, sir?
There you go. I think you have to reinstate Steagall, and I think you need to repeal Sarbanes-Oxley as well.
And that was my next question. Steagall, HR 1489. Do you support reinstating that to protect our commercial
You have to. I mean, because we blurred that line between investment banking and commercial banking. There are people out there in the big bank world that are into things. And, you know, the Dodd-Frank does go after some of these larger banks. But remember what I said, you know, if it's worth regulating, sometimes people believe it's worth over-regulating. And now we've got our small community banks caught up in that web as well. So when the Secretary of Treasury, Timothy Geithner, came and testified before the Small Business Committee that I sit on, I asked him one simple question. When are we going to go back and review Dodd-Frank and clean it up to make sure that we're not penalizing our small community banks? And he told me he'd look into it.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry, that question was from Thomas Simpson in Boca Raton. And Julie Dunson goes on. She's obviously concerned about some of the spending in Washington, D.C.
Where is Julie Johnson? Where is
Julie Johnson is from Jupiter and says, can't Congress cut off?
Don't mess with Julie.
So Julie wants to know, can't Congress cut off the travel allowance to this president and his family?
Oh man, this is on C-SPAN.
Trying to ask everybody's questions.
I'm a tax millionaire.
Hey, look, I think that that's something that, you know, in the military they teach you one simple thing. Leadership begins with the leader. And it's about setting the right example. So I think that if the president is going to be watching me, camera one, sir, we need you to lead by example.
Congressman, this is a question from Judith McInnes from North Palm Beach, and she specifically wants to know what can we do to make public schools more accountable.
For Constitution Day, September 17th.
We'll get to that one.
Well, look, as I said, you know, back in the late 1970s when we had health, education, and welfare, the decision was to take education out and make it its own separate department, Department of Education. Back in the late 1970s when it was created, Department of Education had about 500 employees, had a budget of about $18 to $19 billion. Department of Education today has closer to 5,000 employees and has a budget of about $80 to $85 billion. Education in the United States of America as a system is broken, public school education. I can say that because I did spend a year teaching at Deerfield Beach High School, and that was such an enjoyable experience. I volunteered to go to Afghanistan. So what we have to do, seriously, we've got to make education relevant in the 21st century. I mean, we can't believe that teaching a kid how to take a test is teaching a kid. It's not. Let's start involving our private sector to go in and teach the practical application of some of the theory that we're trying to teach our kids. You know, my 14-year-old daughter, who has just started high school, can do things with a computer that are just unconscionable to me. You know, I can't know how. But guess what? If we don't tap into that level of intellect, if we don't tap into that level of inquisitiveness, then what happens? They're not challenged. And if we have kids that continue to believe at the age of 16, if they fail the FCAT, they have no future, and they drop out, then what happens?
Get rid of have
They
to.
become victims. They become dependent upon something. That something is called government. So therefore, government has to grow to take care of them. And that means less and less for the entrepreneur spirit, less and less for investment, ingenuity, and innovation in this country. So what we have to do is completely scrap our education system and get it in line with the technologies and the types of things that our kids need to learn and be able to contend with in this world today, so that we're producing the next generation that can go out and be productive citizens. Not every kid is going to go on to college, and it's not a right to go to college. But if every kid can leave high school with a defined talent, there's a trade, something that they can say, I can do this. You know, there's nothing wrong with having summer apprenticeships for these kids that can go out because they studied, they've done well, they can go and they can take that thing that they're focused on, that trade, and they can, you know, start to put it to practical application. Because you're creating a future employee. You know, you look at some of these things, I mean, there's nothing wrong with automobile mechanics. You know, plumbers need to learn metric systems. That's nothing easy. We should be training our kids on all of these different things so that they can apply their talents and they can be productive members in their local society. We've got to reform our